Welcome to Garden Plants with Jim Putnam. Let's talk Kay Parris Magnolia. This is Kay Parris Magnolia. These are in a 3-gallon container, so they're just getting started here at Superior Plants. This one goes back to 1991 at Gilbert's Nursery. We actually had Kevin Parris on the channel if you want to go back and take a look at the video we did with him down at Spartanburg College. He was the one that found this one at Gilbert's Nursery, which was where he's working at the time. It's thought to be a combo of Bracken's Brown Beauty and Little Gem Magnolia, and gets kind of the best of both worlds. It has the really great shiny green foliage that you would expect on the top of the leaf of a Southern Magnolia, and then really great brown backing on the leaf, which Little Gem doesn't have quite as well to me as some of the other named varieties out on the market. It can be kept as kind of a shrubby thing, or end up as a fairly large tree, sometimes multi-trunk, sometimes single trunk. Kay Parris actually won a Royal Horticultural Award for garden merit in the past. You can see the growth is pretty quick on this one. These are in newly planted 3 gallons. This one's probably maybe a season longer, and they've about doubled in height side by side here. These you can expect to be a 15 to 20 foot tall plant, maybe 8 feet in width, 8 to 10 feet in width, something like that. Although the one we saw down in at Spartanburg Community College was quite a bit bigger than that. So there's probably a slowing down of, in that 15 to 20 foot range, but it will ultimately get bigger than that. These are going to flower with those really super fragrant white, large flowers, not quite as large as the straight Magnolia grandiflora species. So, you have the big giant flowers on the species, you have a much smaller flower on Little Gem. Somewhere in the middle here is where Kay Parris is going to land. And they'll start flowering in the spring and flower right through the summer and into fall. Large, incredibly fragrant white flower. Then it forms a cone that has these red seeds in it. And you can really tell the length of where magnolias occur on the evolutionary chart, right? Because it's a combination of a flowering plant, amongst the earliest flowering plants on Earth, to bring in to use fragrance and bring in pollinators, but then it forms an actual cone, and it forms its seeds within a cone like we would see on a conifer. So this is somewhere in that evolutionary change from where conifers dominated the planet to where flowering plants dominated the planet. I think you can see the beautiful brown backings on these leaves, just really amazing. And the leaves are slightly at an up angle on this one, so it really presents that brown back on the leaves. These are hardy in zones. Some people say 6 to 9, 6 to 10, 6 to 11. They will grow into much warmer areas, but up into zone 6 is about the extent of the cold hardiness for these Magnolia grandifloras, which, again, they're going to ultimately take up some space in your garden. So we think about these as growing in full sun, but if you actually find a Magnolia grandiflora in the wild, which we have some in our neighborhood, they're seedlings. They're typically in the understory of the canopy of a woodland. So as you get down to the warmer zones, you'll typically see them in more part shade and shade conditions. But as you go further north, it's just independent open plants in their wild ranges. But for most people, you can put them in the full sun. Keep in mind one thing, for us, we're on a very small lot. So this is a smaller growing evergreen magnolia than a regular Magnolia grandiflora or Bracken's Brown Beauty, or one of the other named large growing varieties. But it's still going to take up some space, and it tends to dominate that space. They have very large leaves, and despite the fact that this tree is evergreen, and I'm shooting this, right at the end of the year, and it's fully leafed out here, they do drop leaves all season long, and the leaves are quite big. They tend to just have very little growing under them. They just dominate the space that they're taking up. So if you're considering putting in one of these evergreen magnolias, keep in mind that this one is going to take about a 10-foot wide space in time, and it's going to completely dominate it. And you're not going to be able to grow other things around it very effectively. Let's think about some of the uses for this Kay Parris magnolia. Again, it's somewhere in between the dwarf little gem magnolia, which still gets quite big, and Bracken's brown beauty, which becomes quite large. So not as big as some others, but it's still going to get pretty big. So this is going to typically be used as some sort of hedging plant, and it can actually be sheared into a really tight hedge. I'll talk about that in just a second. A screening plant, a border plant of some kind. Obviously, it can just be a specimen plant, one of a kind, you know, one piece in the garden, and it, you know, will show off in some sort of corner. It could be put on a large house. It could be a corner foundation piece, but you'd have to have a house to kind of scale to the size that this thing is ultimately going to get, and you're going to want to plant it, you know, pretty far off of that the corner of the house. If you have a small space garden, again, this one could be put in, and then you'd have to probably shear it in time to keep it in the scale of your small space garden. One thing I will say is this one has become, because these leaves are up on an angle like this, and that the back of that leaf has such great color, it's become the go-to choice for wreath makers. And so a lot of people that make magnolia wreaths during the Christmas season, which can be long lasting, you can have them year over year, use this plant, and it can actually just be sheared and hedged, and those pieces be cut off during the Christmas season, and make wreaths and all kinds of centerpieces for various decorating during the Christmas season. Southern magnolias tend to be pH tolerant and become pretty drought tolerant in time. There are some in our neighborhood that are really old established ones. Nobody's ever watering them at all, and they just once they become established, maybe takes a couple years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. Once they are, and you're in an area that gets pretty regular rainfall, they just don't really need any kind of ongoing watering at that point. They can be pruned to shape. So there's two ways of thinking about this. Either you put it in a space and you've got enough room for it, and if you do, the only pruning you'd ever need to do on it would be maybe coming in here and taking out some crossing branches, making sure that nothing is in the middle of it, just kind of causing damage to itself. You know, maybe there's an errant, crazy limb sticking out the side of it somewhere. That's about the only pruning you do on it. But most people are going to put these as a border or a screen or in some sort of confined space that's not going to allow it to really take on its full mature size. And at that point, you can do some shearing on it. Keep in mind that you're probably going to eliminate some flowers, shearing on it a whole lot. But that's the price you have to pay sometimes for putting something in a space that, it's going to be super, super confined. The only my only thoughts on, planting this thing is making sure it's not a super wet area. But we have them in the neighborhood that's up on mounds and slopes and really tough to grow spaces. And they really have no problem whatsoever and really difficult planted spaces. One additional thought on the pruning is you wouldn't want to do it in the late winter, early spring. You'd definitely be taking flowers off. So the sweet spot to prune these is after they're big flowering in the spring and early summer, and get them pruned by midsummer so that they have a chance to heal over before they go into that first winter, because they can do some bleeding. They have a hard time sealing their own wounds. So getting that done during the summer is kind of ideal. Fertilizing, they really don't. I mean, this is a native plant, and once it's established in your garden, if you're keeping it mulched, if you're keeping it in a bed where it's it's got its own kind of space, we'll fertilize our entire garden with an organic fertilizer in the late winter. May not be necessary at all on one of these Southern Magnolias once they're established to give them any fertilizer. They're typically pretty pest-free in the garden in a healthy space. If they're in a space where they're under stresses, you'll see some leaf spot issues on them. You may see some magnolia scale, which magnolia scale can be an issue. We'll see that in a nursery setting where we're pushing them too hard. They tend to be under stresses. But in a healthy environment where they're getting water kind of when they need it, and they're in a bed and they're not overcrowded and those kinds of things are being pushed too hard, they tend to be very disease and insect resistant. But Kay Parris magnolia is just absolutely one of the best hybrid Southern magnolias out on the out on the market and has been for a very, very long time. That back on that leaf is just so nice. It's just a great plant, great looking plant, heavy flowering variety, and an easy overall ornamental plant, but you need to have some space for it. It really does need some space. It's also not a plant that limbs itself up very well. So in the future, if you're thinking, well, I'll just lift it up in the future by taking off some limbs, sometimes they don't look very good like that either. So it really does need the space. And if you have the space for it, Kay Parris Magnolia is a good one. Thanks for watching.